building footprint is pretty impressive if you go by the absolute numbers. According to India Green Building Council or IGBC, we could soon hit the target of 10 billion square feet of certified green buildings in a year or so, making India a global leader with the largest green building footprint. But, and it's a big but, most of this 10 billion green rated building footprint will be achieved in India's commercial or office sector, not residential. On this World Environment Day, we bring you face-to-face with India's leading sustainability experts, Anubhav Gupta, Chief CSR and Sustainability Officer at Godrej Properties, On Abdullah, Deputy Vice President, Design and Sustainability Lead, Lodha Group, and Manit Rastogi, Architect and Founding Partner, Morphogenesis, to tell us how do we take India's housing sector to not more green, but to net zero. We ended 2021 or above with a total of 8.2 billion square feet of green certified buildings, and that's the only parameter, so I have to take just that figure. Residential, though, in this total 8 billion accounted for only 2 billion. Now, residential we know makes up for 75% of the total real estate market. Why do you think there is such a big gap?
So first of all, thanks, Manisha, for having me. Quick numbers. For us at Godrej Properties, 90% of our portfolio is green. That includes both residential and commercial. Every building we do has to be silver rated at least. The problem on the residential side tends to be, and if I may, the process is divided into three parts. There's something called pre-certification, there's something called certification, and then there is the actual use of the asset. I suspect what's happening is that because the MOEF norms, which every building has to go through, has similar specs to green building ratings. So I feel like most of the folks are going into green building pre-certification. They may not be going into actual certification. Those that are actually going into actual certification, by the time the asset gets delivered, this infrastructure may be in disuse or may not be maintained properly, which would suggest that there's a breakdown. Now, the reason there's a breakdown as compared to the commercial segment is, I think it boils down to ownership. Typically, in the commercial segment, what ends up happening is there is one owner or a set of owners that own, operate, and lease the asset. In the residential space, what ends up happening is there is a fragmented ownership, and typically it's left either to facilities managers or to societies. So I feel that's where the breakdown probably happens.
Would you agree with that? That look, if you're meeting the basic MOEF standards and even the building bylaws which are set out by urban development, municipalities, etc., you are actually doing the basic which is needed for a green rating. My question is that happening widespread, or is it only the top developers like Lodha and Godrej which are going in for it? And how do we make it a wider movement?
So I would just like to say that it would be unfair to say that our residential buildings are any less greener than the commercial building stock. So while they may not be certified at a larger scale, while we are certifying our entire portfolio, Godrej is also doing that. But even the buildings which are not certified, just saying that they are any less. If you compare the like-to-like portfolio of commercial and residential, I would even say that the large residential developments would perform better on various sustainability aspects. Certification in itself is not the key. While all respect and all applause to our certification friends, they have been able to help us, come out of the inertia, build capabilities, help us with benchmarks and so on. But I think the main thing is that we have to become climate conscious. We have to take a net zero route. We have to embrace circularity in a much larger and deeper way. So that is the way forward, not the
green certified.
Only the certification.
I agree with you on, but I mean, we are struggling here to even get to that green certified rating. But both of you are saying that don't go with the green certification of residential. You could actually probably have them at par, at least with the large developers. Manit, is that true? I mean, there is more than meets the eye on numbers, because I'm looking at 8 billion and saying 6 billion is commercial and office and only 2 billion is residential. Wouldn't everyone want to go for a rating?
So let's address that in two ways. One, what we must understand about residential is that it's a sales segment, it's a B2C segment. And the end user, the buyer, doesn't really directly benefit from a green rating or not, okay, or doesn't know what the real benefits are. And in India, owning a home in itself is a huge challenge, and for people, this affordability becomes a key issue. Now, in that context, there are various benefits that so in a sense the demand is not really coming from the buyers. So why would anyone rate a residential project? So a lot of the reasons why they're being rated is because municipalities are giving SOPs. Now, I don't agree with those SOPs, because the SOPs generally come in the form of additional FAR vis-a-vis the rating, whether you are depending on the rating system. And what that really means is that the developers get to build more. So they are happy, the architects are happy, but really the end user doesn't gain from that. So what would really be useful is if you look at where the buyer spends the money. So if they got a rebate on property tax, for example, if they got a rebate on their home loans, if there were tangible benefits and the demand and the need for green buildings under certification came to the fore from the buyer, we just see this whole proportion of the 2 billion completely shift to maybe 100%.
Okay. Anubhav, would you agree with that? That look, one is that states are incentivizing developers for going in for ratings by saying, hey, take extra FAR. But how do we bring demand from the end consumer? Certain things like property tax breaks or showing them actual benefits. Where do we land? Because, I just saw recent news, Mahindra Eden project, which is net energy zero, was sold out in 3 days. So I'm beginning to believe that there is a demand out there, at least it's growing day by day.
I would agree with you, Manisha, and we're also finding this from our customers when we talk to them. I think there is a demand. What there isn't is evidence that would substantiate an ability or willingness to pay. And when I say pay, first of all, there's a myth that green buildings are more expensive. That is not very true. Typically, a green building would cost, if it's designed properly, anywhere between 2 to 7, at most 9% of cost of construction, which is not significant, right? I think there's a lot of evidence or gap lacking on that side of the argument to make a strong economic case to customers to substantiate the demand. And that can easily be done today, right? We have amazing home automation systems, which are great at turning on and off the lights and all these things.
Yeah, look at the startup ecosystem. There are tons of products out there. There's smart jewels. I mean, you look at water sensors. There are tons of startups who are doing that. So I think it's now beginning to get more demonstrable. But I get your point that you have to be able to demonstrate the savings for the end consumer to be willing to shell out 3 to 5% more or 6% more, as much as it would require initially for the fitting of green buildings. On one question to you, here we're still talking about green ratings, but look at what we've committed to globally to reduce carbon intensity of the economy by less than 45%. That's what our Prime Minister has committed. That ain't going to happen with just green ratings. I mean, we've got to push the bar much higher, isn't it?
That exactly is the thing that so we are all planning to bring the carbon down, and that's why you see all these commitments out there in the market from the leaders. We want to become carbon neutral. We not only want to become carbon neutral in our operations, but we also want to become net zero following the 1.5 degree ambition. So this is not a building issue. It is an overall life cycle issue. Right. So we have to decarbonize our supply chain. We have to decarbonize our operations. We have to decarbonize the product itself, the life cycle of the product, use of product. So, and it comes back again that how will this be solved? This can be solved only at scale. It's not a building issue at all. It's an integrated urban issue. If there is an urban model which can be used as a template and then replicated everywhere, where a person can walk to work, where at scale the embodied carbon can also be reduced.
two points that I'm taking away from you, that it's a life cycle issue. And number two, that it can't be done building by building. Manit, quickly wrap out on this point. I mean, how do we get to net zero? Will it always require scale?
See, scale is of course critical. In a country like India, nothing without scale works. I mean, if you can't, think big, start small, and scale rapidly, it's not going to work.
Okay.
However, the key to all of this is that housing, residential developments and housing are essentially not that big a consumer per square meter of energy as much as the problem is water. And water is the biggest barrier to our residential developments. And until we begin to address, and water and energy are symbiotic, they're symbiotic. And everyone, when they talk about sustainability, think energy, and that's not really true. Water, and we mentioned waste to landfill, and how we run these projects becomes critical. And now if you look at the pure problem of water in a housing development, we produce excess of wastewater which goes off in drains. Okay, there are cultural issues with reusing water. Cities are drying up. We know that's the biggest challenge that India is going to face over the next decade or two. So I think that the role, and that's where scale is important. You can't solve water by looking at one project. You have to see it at a city scale. Cities have to become net zero in water. Buildings can become net zero in energy or carbon neutral or even carbon positive. But when you want to go for water neutrality, you have to do it at the scale of the city.
We need a complete shift in thinking on how we build our cities. And the time's running out, so we need to get there very, very fast. But we have to keep these conversations on. Thank you, Anubhav, and Manit, for taking us through your ideas and vision. And thanks to everyone out there for watching, and goodbye.